Beyond the rush of the world, there's a deeper conversation waiting. This is Seekers and Finders. Some are known for what they write, others for what they hear. Lisa Najjar is known as a psychic and medium, but her work reaches beyond messages. It moves into the unseen current beneath life, the space where prayer, intuition, and awakening meet. Beyond the veil, beyond fear, into preparation, into awareness, into the mystery that surrounds us every day. And today, we step into that field with her. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you. It's so good to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
But here's my first question. When did you realize this wasn't just intuition or imagination, that you were actually perceiving beyond ordinary senses?
That's an interesting question. And I have been asked it before. And as I think about it, I don't know if I ever did, because I would have been a natural born psychic medium. And I went along through my life, didn't know any of it, didn't think anything of it. And one day when I was, this is in the book too, but when I was around 17 and I was living with my friend temporarily, she had had two of her sisters pass away, her younger and her older, within a year of each other. And so the house was just filled with grief. And I happened to be staying in the bedroom that both of the sisters at one time had as theirs. And so things would happen in the bedroom, and I just knew they were Liz and Teresa. And then it was around Christmas time, and one night I couldn't get to sleep because I kept hearing out in the living room, right outside my door, I could hear the baubles and bells and things on the trees moving and shaking and ringing. And so I'd go out and I saw them moving. And the next morning, I just very matter-of-factly said to her, Denise, your sisters were here. And they're very excited. It's Christmas and all of that. And she sort of looked at me like, okay. So I said it so matter-of-factly. She didn't buy into it. Her parents kind of rolled their eyes. And that was the end of that. I didn't think any more of it. And really fast forward all the way through as I'm court reporting, I still didn't think anything of it until one time, a friend of mine who was a minister at a spiritualist church, but I knew her from another church that I was in a prayer circle with. She took me to her spiritualist church. And when the medium came to me, she said to me, you can do what I do. And I looked at her and said, what exactly is it that you do? Like, I didn't even know the name. I didn't know what medium was. And so she kind of laughed. So it was that natural that I didn't even realize it. And I didn't start thinking about using it in any kind of a professional manner. I would have never, ever thought of that, actually, because I was very happy being a court reporter until two events. And one was the missing persons case that I mentioned in the book. And another was when Walt Disney and Abraham Lincoln and George Harrison came to me about the book. So that's when I believed, and I can get into those stories if you'd like, but that's when I realized that, okay, this is, I guess, yes, I do have this, and maybe I should be using it in some other way than just sort of having it naturally come to me. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I think that's my next question is, when it first started, was it a physical feeling, an emotional feeling, or more like a shift in awareness? How did this just move into your being?
Well, see, this is the thing. When I was in that bedroom and I heard them outside, it was just the way that I'm speaking to you. I don't have to think about my words. I don't have to think about the breathing. I don't have to think about anything. It's a knowing. So I guess it's claircognizance. I just knew that's Liz and Teresa. They're having fun out there. Let me go see what they're doing. And it was just, I guess that if somebody had asked me, hey, what did you just do there? Then I might have thought, well, wait a minute, what did I just do? I just assumed that was just a normal thing that we all knew that. We would all know that we could hear people from the other side. The other thing they did is I had lost a niece who was only 2 years old, and it was not too long. It was around that same time period. And I had her picture in my bedroom that I was staying in temporarily. And every night that picture would end up face down under the bed. every night. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like, okay, Liz and Teresa, I know you did that again. And it was just, I'm speaking to them like the way I'm speaking to you. So I just knew. And I don't think I added any weight to it or gave it any sort of notice, if you will, just very matter of fact.
Did you ever notice it while you were doing your court recording? You're sitting there typing away, and all of a sudden, something just entered into you.
No, I didn't. But I'll tell you, when I left court reporting, once I started this, and I had my son, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and I was happy to be that. And so as I was raising him, and that I didn't, I started looking into more spiritual things. And after he went to, when he was much older, I thought, well, maybe I'll go back to court reporting for a couple days a week. And when I went into the court, oh my gosh, could I ever feel the energy? Because at that point, I had already been meditating. Now I was taking this seriously and raising my vibration. And I went in and I could be in the best mood. And within 5 minutes, I wanted to like scream. And I thought, what's going on? And eventually it hit me. Oh, it's the energy in the courts. Because imagine, it's desperation, it's deception, it's anger, everything you can imagine in a courtroom. So what I started doing, and this was kind of silly, but I would go in early to set up. And I didn't think anyone was watching me. So I would bring holy water and crystals, and I was putting them in all the corners of the courtroom and spritzing this holy water. Well, I forgot that, yeah, there are cameras. And so the registrar came up to me one day and he said, Lisa, on the camera, I'm noticing you're doing something. What are you doing in every corner? I said, oh my gosh, okay, wait a minute. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. I said, I'm praying and I'm clearing energy. And he laughed and he didn't say much about it. It was kind of cute, but needless to say, it didn't fix the problem. And I actually couldn't work in the courts. Once my energy was a certain frequency, I could no longer work in the courts because it's just too awful. It's just, it's so heavy and dark, and it wasn't a fit for me. I didn't feel good. So,
well, you said you did murder trials, right?
I did not do murder trials. I did a lot of tax court. I did the federal tax court in Canada, and I did a lot of the disciplinary boards for medical and insurance and real estate. So there was a lot of things like that. I did a lot of accident cases and stuff like that. So, but murder, no, that was a different thing. That we had when I was living in Calgary, Canada, there was a high-profile missing persons case. It was an elderly couple that went out on a vacation and they never came back. And I didn't watch the news at the time because I was very cognizant of my, vibration. So I never put on the news. But I was having lunch with a friend one day, and she started talking about the case. And as soon as she started talking about it, I could feel the lady there. And I said, okay, this missing lady is in front of me. And anyways, that lady followed me home. And for about 2 weeks, all she kept saying is, you need to find my daughter. You must find my daughter. Please find my daughter. And I kept saying to her, look, I know nothing about your daughter. I don't even know her name. I cannot go to some random person and just tell her, please don't ask me to do this. And she would not leave until I found her daughter. So because it was pretty high profile, I found out who this family was. I didn't know if they had more than one daughter. So I had to find out. And in fact, they only had one daughter. So I did find the number. I got a hold of the number through a lot of channels. And it was a very challenging call to make because I'm calling this woman. I don't know if she believes in this. So I had to make this very difficult call. I phoned her up and I said, look, I don't know if, I'm not sure how to even begin. I have something to tell you. I don't know if you'll believe me or not, but your mother has been with me for 2 weeks. She will not leave me alone until I get a hold of you. And she said, I do believe you, and I'm coming to your house. And she came over. It was like 9 o'clock that night. Oh, I should say, before I called her, the mother said, before you get in touch with her, when I finally said, okay, I'll do it. She said, wait, before you do it, do this for me. So she asked me to get a piece of paper. So I did. And she channeled a poem through me. I put it on some nice paper the next day. And so when she came right to my house that night at 9 o'clock, and she walked in the door and I handed her that poem. And that's when she broke down in tears and she said, now I know this really is my mother. because I've had over 100 psychic mediums working on this case, and nobody can give me the proof that I need until now. She said, my mom and I were standing in the kitchen before she went on that holiday. We were standing in the kitchen baking. And she said, we just somehow it came up about, well, if anything happens to you. And so we made this pact that if anything happens to either one of them, the only way that they would know for sure it was them is if they would put something in writing. And if it didn't come in writing, it wasn't them. And she said, nobody had ever given me anything in writing. And now I know my mom has passed. So, and she did. And they have since concluded the case. But that's when I realized that, wow, this gift could be used for healing, great healing, and things of that nature. And so that changed my perspective about this, because I really didn't want any part of doing this, to be honest with you.
And you said it was the hardest call you ever had to make.
Definitely. Oh, definitely. I mean, to tell somebody, first of all, most people would be thinking, what? Like, you're crazy. But even if they believed it, the next part is, your mom's not here. She's passed. They were looking for her for months, and nobody could find these people. And so she didn't know, the family didn't know if they were dead or alive. And my confirmation was bittersweet, because yes, there's closure now. We know they're dead, but also we know they passed. So it was very challenging. It was really hard.
But it's a great lesson, because had you not had you given into your resistance or your fear of making that call, because you did say it's the hardest thing you ever had to do, look, that whole resolution would have not taken place. But by breaking through that resistance or that fear, I mean, it was great that you were able to do that and call the woman, and look how it resolved.
Thank you. Yes, you're so right. I really actually didn't think about it that way. That I keep thinking how it changed the trajectory of my life, but I really wasn't thinking in terms of, okay, all the ripple effects of that. You're right, because to be honest, I won't get into the details, but what they ended up finding, I don't think they ever would have found these people. I honestly don't. So they might have still to this day be wondering whatever happened. Are they, yeah.
Well, what you did was a part of grace, because that is an energy that is really, next to unconditional love, the most powerful energy there is, I think.
There's something about the word grace that is, the vibration of it is so beautiful. And I often said, if I love my name, I've always loved the name Lisa. But if I was not named Lisa, or if I ever want to change or add something to my name, it would have been Grace, Lisa Grace.
Okay, so when you connect with someone who's passed, do you experience them as a personality, or more like a field of awareness that takes shape?
That's interesting. I took a mediumship class just to kind of figure out I could do it, but just to figure out what am I doing and what should I be doing or whatever. What I realized in there, I learned how to do evidential mediumship, but since then I've moved away from that. I do mediumship very differently than most people. Most people will give you all kinds of evidence and all that, and I can do that, but it tends to come a different way. I feel like for me, what I am is actually a soul healer. What I'm mostly interested in is not to give evidence of life after death. That's I'll leave that to other mediums, and that's what they do. And that's why all the descriptions and all of that come through. What I'm interested in is the relationships between people, because so many people, their loved ones die and things are not good, often with parents or spouses or different sisters, brothers, whatever. And there's issues that were unresolved. And I feel like I'm actually a psychologist or something that's helping people doing psychology sessions, marital counseling and family counseling from the other side. And so I focus a lot on that, helping people figure out what happened, what their karma was between them, the two souls. What karma did you have? Were you complete with it? What were you here to learn? Did you learn it? How much did you learn? And that sort of thing. And there's a lot of pain for people when they lose a loved one, oftentimes. Not so much when it's a child, because there's not a lot of that going on. But if it's somebody that is, like I said, a family member, like sister, brother, mother, father, husband, wife, there's often a lot there. And people feel incomplete. They often feel guilty about things they did or didn't do, things they did or didn't say. I get a lot of that. People's fathers or mothers die, and maybe there was some abuse or some neglect or some things that they're deeply wounded about. And I can bring healing to them because I can see the whole trajectory of their lives as they meet together, and how many lifetimes they've come together in, and what the backstory is about their lives. So that's where I focus more, and it's a different kind of mediumship than a lot of other people. But the clients who come to me, they seem to, maybe they're just drawn because energetically everybody that needs what I can give them comes to me, and that's maybe how they find me or what have you.
Do you see them, or do you just feel them?
The lady that came to me in that missing persons case, that was one of the few times I saw her. Now, I have to sort of back up for a minute. When I first started realizing that, oh, okay, I can do this thing, whatever this thing was called, mediumship, psychic work, I was quite a nervous Nelly back then. And I said, listen, I was very clear with Spirit. I said, I don't ever want to see anything. Don't you ever scare me. I don't want to see things. I don't want to see dead things. And I don't want this. And of course, they, laughed. And so they honored me, and they never showed me things. So clairvoyantly, I kind of put a block on that. But they did show me that lady. I saw her, and a few other times I've seen things. Usually, though, it's clairaudiently, so I hear them, they speak, and also it's again claircognizant, where I just know. They impress upon me whatever they want to say, which is basically how I channeled my book.
Yeah, and I want to bring that. I want to interject something here, because reading your book, so you saw Jesus and George Harrison because you had to distinguish between the two of them.
I did, and I also, it worked so differently for my book because it was like a production where they would have like this these curtains that would open, and there the person would be. It was more like that. And yes, you're right. I did see, because I could barely make out, like they were in these robes. And I thought, okay, which one's which? I had to really zoom in. And some of them, yes, but say for Paul Newman, I could smell his cigarette smoke. I knew it was him because of the cigarette smoke. And also I felt like crying because he had such a sadness waiting for his wife. And so those two things.
I read that. And I have I don't want to get too much into my story, but I have a connection with Paul Newman because when I was living in Westport, Connecticut, I used to drive for Paul and Joanne and their daughter, Clea. And Paul he's such a heart-oriented guy. I was reading that account and I said, oh man, he smoked himself to death, the poor guy. And he loved Joanne so much. Anyway, that was very touching, that particular episode in the book. By the way, hey, I want to say you got to read this book. It's fantastic. I got it on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon. But the Paul Newman part was so touching because I knew the guy. To drive him up to Lime Rock, Connecticut, because he used to race cars up there. What a great guy he was.
That's so, and I will say something here. I haven't really shared this with many people, I don't think at all, but he came to me quite a lot outside of the book, and he asked me to please get in touch with his family, his wife. And you know what? It's the one time I didn't do it. I kept saying, Paul, no, I can't, because they might think, like, they might be really angry that I'm saying that I'm talking to you. I was really new in this field back then, and I was scared. I didn't want to do it. I thought they're public figures. I can't do this. I kept saying, please go ask somebody else. There's plenty of mediums out there. Go ask somebody else, not me. And I didn't do it for a long time. And then finally, he came to me. I forget what year that was, maybe 2017, I'm going to say, or late 16. And I finally said, fine, okay, I'll do it. Fine, because he kept bugging me. And I did a little bit of research, and I noticed it said in various articles that Joanne was already now in dementia and that she was not really aware too much. And I said, okay, Paul, now I think I'm not, because you really want me to contact her. And if she's not even aware, why pull the family in like this? So I didn't do it.
And also, I want to add something to this, because this may be part of you may have picked up, like, no, you shouldn't do it. Now Paul was wide open. He'd get in the car and he'd have a 6-pack of Bud with him, no smoking, but he would give me a beer and we'd go up to Lime Rock. But Joanne was just the opposite. Joanne was very reticent. She would get in the car, she was very polite, very nice woman, very sweet woman, but she would sit in the back and work on her scripts. I would drive her into her acting workshops in the city and all. And the one time I tried to talk to her, because I found out she took S. Oh, and I had taken S. I said, oh, we're going to have a big conversation about S. No, so she was not that type of person. So maybe you kind of felt she would have like, no, I don't want to go there. She was like very, I don't want to say closed off. She was very polite, very quiet, and very much, inwardly focused, not like Paul, oh, you know what, we're talking about everything. So perhaps you picked up the right vibration there.
Well, thank you for saying that, because it's something I've always wrestled with. I've always felt really bad. Like I didn't help him in this. I didn't do what he said. And he was so kind to me and good and such a good man. And I always felt very guilty about that. And years later, I met a gal in New York, and she told me that she was their neighbor, and she still knew one of the daughters very well and was still in contact. And I said at that point, you can tell her if you want about this, because this is after the fact now, after I knew the mom had already, gone into more late stage, I guess, Alzheimer's or what have you. So I don't know if she ever did, my friend. I said, you feel free to, if you're ever with her, to tell her about it. And if she wants to read the book, that's fine. Because at that point I had made peace with it. But I apologize profusely to Paul. And you're right. Maybe I was just feeling and sensing maybe it's not going to be well received. Mm-hmm.
So do you have relationships with other psychic mediums?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Do they ever tell you that they've also channeled that person?
No, I haven't had anybody that's told me that they've channeled the people in my book, for sure. But they do regular sessions with people, ordinary clients. I mean, a few people have written me to tell me that they've channeled some of the guests in my book, but I don't know them personally. The ones I know personally, no, they don't really do it that way or do sort of celebrity stuff.
But it's interesting because usually when I see psychics on TV, they're telling the person they're sitting with what this other person is saying, but you've had conversations with these people. So it seems even more expansive, where it's a back and forth dialogue with you and the person that you're, I don't know if the word channeling is correct or, so my next question is, do you ever feel that what we call the other side isn't really another place, but another level of perception happening right here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I think it all is, because, you can hear people talk like Lorna Byrne, who's, I call her the angel lady. She wrote the Angels in My Hair book, and she lives in Ireland. And she has had experiences with angels since she was literally in the crib. And to read her story is amazing. And she can see that. And people like, I don't, like, because I ask spirit, I don't want to see, but people like her can see. And the room, like my room right now that I'm looking at here, is just filled with all manner of beings. So yeah, I think it's just a radio station, and we're just not tuned into that one yet. And I kind of think it's almost a safeguard, because imagine we have enough, look at the world around us, right? There's so much going on that, can you imagine if we could see all these beings from various planets and different dimensions? I think we'd all be literally insane. So I think it's a blessing.
That's perfect for my next place to go, because I have seen these beings. Okay. And I was in my prior life before we retired, my wife and I were wedding photographers. And so I actually had an experience in a church in New Jersey where I saw an angel hovering over the bride and groom. Beautiful. And it was an amazing experience. And the reason was because the ceremony was held with the regular minister in the church, but the groom was from Spain, and the groom's family was also from Spain. And the groom and his family, none of them spoke English. So they brought in a Dominican monk from Morristown, New Jersey, to this particular church to translate for the groom and his family. So the minister would say one thing, blah, 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 blah. Do you take that? And then the monk would translate it into Spanish for the rest of the people. So this went on. What would normally maybe be an hour or an hour and a half ceremony lasted at least 3 or 4 hours. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
However, I finally got to the point where, you can only take so many pictures of them sitting up on the stage. So I was sitting on an aisle seat towards the back, listening to what was going on stage, kind of like spacing out a little bit. And I looked, and there was this huge angel hovering above the bride. And I mean, this angel was huge, wings, everything. And this went on for about 5 minutes. I was watching him. And then all of a sudden, this little boy, I would say about 9 or 10 years old, with the same features as the groom, very dark, very Latin features, came floating out of the angel's wings and floated with the angel above the two of them, and then dissolved. And when I say dissolved, I mean dissolved. They just went. So I'm wondering, do you have any visitations, Lisa?
Well, let's think about that, because I've certainly seen, I'm sure in my history here, I am certain that I've had things that I've seen. Like I said, it doesn't happen often, but I have a question. Was that little boy that you saw, do you know if it turned out to be their son?
Well, here's the interesting part of the story. When we, after the fact, they went on their honeymoon, they came into the studio to pick up their proofs. And I said to my wife, do you think I should say anything about this to them? And she said, absolutely not. You want to scare them out of this place? But of course, I don't listen very well. So a half hour or so into the showing them the proofs, I turned to the bride, because she was translating for her husband. I said, look, I have to tell you something. And I really, really say this with all sincerity. And I hope you won't take this the wrong way. My wife shoots me a look, but I would not stop. And I said, I saw an angel at your wedding hovering above. And there was this little boy that came out of the angel that looked just now. They didn't have a child yet, and I haven't seen them since. But she translated it to her husband, and he started to cry. And he saw it as a reality. So I don't know if if they did have if they did have a son, I'm sure the son was going to have similar features to the father. Okay. And, but yeah, that's, yeah, I don't know if they had a child, but yeah. The other thing I wanted to tell you is I've seen the astral body of people that have passed at funerals. And it freaked me out at first, but then I got used to it, because, well, I saw my father's soul when it left the casket and went into the inner worlds in the funeral home, and it just rose out of the casket and floated around. It looked like a golden doorknob kind of thing, floated around, and then blink, gone. And then I was at a funeral with my wife for this young man, the nephew of her best friend, who I mentioned when she went to the psychic to find. And as I'm standing in line, my wife is talking to them. I'm standing in line, the casket is open, and I looked out of the right corner of my eye, and I saw him sitting on the lid of the casket in jeans, special shirt, watching everything. And I was like, oh boy, this is fantastic. So I didn't say anything. I went back to my seat, and I was seated all the way in the second section, in the first row of the second section. And I'm just watching the line move up and talk. And I see this gray ball-like kind of stuff, translucent, floating above everybody. And everybody that came up to talk to his mother, he was drawing energy, and I could see the energy leaving that person who was talking, leaving their head and being pulled in by that gray mass that was floating above. So, I mean, after everything that has happened in my life with seeing, things like that, I gotta say that, I mean, I'm not crazy. I have seen it. I mean, I see entities in where I live now in my apartment from time to time. So, and that's why I asked you this important question. Is it another place, or is it just the perception of something that's happening right here, right now?
I mean, my feeling is, and I don't know if I'm right, but I feel like it is a radio station thing, and that depending, you can tune into different frequencies, and I personally, that's why I gave Spirit the rule that you cannot show me anything. I don't want to see it. I don't want to be scared about anything, because I just really didn't want that. And they've listened for the most part and haven't showed me that. But I think that, yeah, I can't speak to sort of the heavenly realms and all of that, but yeah, I think you can definitely turn your frequency, turn that radio dial to different stations and see things. How I know people are there, well, I feel them, I know them, I sense them, I hear them, and oftentimes, like, there was a period of time, maybe a 7-year period of time in my life, where I call them the magical years, where I was just really, really connected and very tuned in to them, to that whole realm, and the angelic realm especially. And I would know that they just showed me all the time that they were there. And so, and just to prove to people, I would say, all right, like I went up to here in Alberta, we have in the Rocky Mountains, there's 4 lakes, Lake Moraine, Lake Emerald, Lake O'Hara, and Lake Louise. Lake Louise is said to be, they're all angelic lakes, and Lake Louise is said to be the place where Archangel Michael goes when he's on the earth. And then Lake O'Hara, very few people go there because they only let something like 30 people on this bus that goes once a day. You have to book like a year in advance because they don't want anyone there. It is said to be already it's in the 5th dimension. Well, one weekend, a couple summers ago, I went to all 4 lakes. Well, I go to the other 3 a lot, but that one, Lake O'Hara, hadn't gone to. The moment I got there, I knew Archangel Michael was there, and I could feel him. And I stood on this rock, and I said to my friends, take a picture of me. This is before we had the smartphones, but I said, take a picture of me because he's right there above my head. And I went like this, I'm looking up. And then I have that picture on my website on the contact page. This big, beautiful orb is right there above my hands. And then we just had the most amazing experiences there with Michael, showing our past lives, me and my friends, our past lives and all kinds of stuff, things that we had been wrestling with. He kind of put into perspective and helped us process a lot of things. And that's happened a lot, even at Lake Louise, where I'll say, show yourself to me. Or when my son played football, every time I was sitting in the stands, I would always, first I'd take a picture of the stands before I'd call in the angels. And then I'd say, all right, now, all you angels come in. And then I take the same picture from the same angle. And you can see the difference in the pictures. One is just a night sky, and one is just completely filled with orbs. And so I would always call them in. And I did that just to show my friends because they didn't believe me. But I'd show them, hey, look, I'm not calling them in yet. And then here's what it looks like. Now I've just called them in. Look what's happened. And I would call in the angels knowing that they were always there to protect the boys on the field, to where, wherever I would go, whatever I was doing, I just always had this very close relationship with the angels. And so I kind of saw them that way versus the way you're seeing them. And I think for a person such as myself, maybe it's better. I see them my way because.
Of course. I mean, but do you have to call in so in other words, you've done quite a few podcasts, I guess, and interviews. Have you ever been just sitting there and something just came in without you calling it and you wanted to tell the person you were talking to?
Well, yes. So when a deceased loved one comes in, how they come in for me is they play with my hair. So I'll know that there's this tickling on my hair. And so I'll say, oh, somebody, in fact, I was in the car just the other day with, I forget who now. Oh my gosh. I was in the car with, my friend. Yes. And all of a sudden her mom had passed a couple months back. And I had been with her many, many times, and she has never come through. But we were in the car and on the way to a play. And I said, your mom's here, because she was playing with my hair. So I gave her a message. So that's the sign that loved ones are there. When it's a master, a Jesus or Mother Mary or an archangel, they come in through my third eye. I can feel my third eye pulsing, and I'll know they're there. And that's when I go into a really high frequency, very high state. And it's, I'm sure you guys have experienced that. But yeah, it's very different than channeling deceased loved ones, to the point where you have to ground yourself. Like you're high because you're going into they take you up to a whole different level.
You look very high. You look very high in this picture. I'm on your website. It's your website, dyingtotellyouBooks.com, and you mentioned the contact section. You look so high there. This is the picture you were alluding to with Archangel Mike. There's something above your head, but really, people have to should go out there and see it. It's a tremendous picture. What's that like? It's like an orb above your head in the picture.
Huge green orb. And there's another picture I didn't put on there, but I'm now talking to him while they're taking pictures and I'm speaking to him. And as I'm speaking, so my voice, the vibration coming out of my mouth, you can see where it almost makes indents into this orb. They're so cool, these pictures.
Yeah.
But that's the one I put on there. Yeah. So, and I just I knew he was there. I said, he's right here, right above my head. If you take a picture, you will see it when we get these developed, because we were getting developed pictures back then. It was a really powerful weekend we were there. So if anyone gets a chance to come up to these lakes, like I said, 3 of them you can visit. One of them you have to book the bus to take in. You can hike in too. It's about an hour and a half hike in.
This is interesting. You talked about 5th dimensional space. But now that I think about it, and when we were talking about the whole idea that it's the perception that's actually happening right here, it's when you think of the 5th dimension as opposed to 3rd dimension, you think of that it's higher, but maybe it's just vibrating at a faster speed.
Totally.
And we just can't see it. And those beings that we do see, that kind of like slow down a little bit so we can see them, are just right here anyway, around us all the time, just like we can't see microbes, but they're here, So, wow, that's fascinating.
Absolutely. And if we could vibrate, and here's the thing, back in those magical years I mentioned, I had really raised my frequency. I was seeing and doing things, and it was just really cool. And I was able to heal my body and change, gray hair into brown hair. I mean, just having a lot of mastery. And when you get to that level, I mean, you talked about an Indian Swami, and I have a Swami that I followed for a while. And sitting, well, you guys would know this, but, sitting in front of these beings, it's crazy. Like they're vibrating at a whole different level. And, the one I was sitting in, I was having a private darshan in front of mine, Swami Purna. And while I was sitting there, like 1.5 feet in front of him, he turned and he was just his light body. And so you're able to do that. They don't have to eat or sleep the way we do, and all of these things. And I think when we go into that higher frequency, which is where I was in those years I mentioned, I was able to do a lot of things that I kind of let go of and kind of got more in the body after that. But I showed myself that with some effort, you can get into those states, and then you're vibrating at, a closer level to these angelic beings and what have you. And I think if you can get to that level, sure, you probably see them just like I'm seeing you guys.
Well, we used to meditate with the guru in large group meditation. We had a center where people would congregate. And,
what was your Swami's name?
Sri Chinmoy.
Okay, nice.
Who passed in 2007 or something like that. Anyway, he left the body in 2000. He had his Maha Samadhi in 2007. But when we used to meditate with him, and you'd look at some of these disciples who were obviously as high as you could possibly get because they were so devoted to this, the vibration that went on between the guru sitting in his throne on the stage, you could basically see the light emanating around everybody, and it was quite awesome. But our meditations, he used to do 24-hour meditations. Don't ask me how, but it was ridiculous. And you'd sit there and you'd fall asleep, and then I mean, it produced something that was otherworldly. So, and that's what I took away from it. I was allowed to believe there was something other than what I thought was just the only thing that was. So when I left the center, I said, "Oh, I've got something new to take with me," and it became a practice, like yoga practice does become.
That's right.
Has this path cost you personally that people might not see?
No, a lot of people do ask me that, like, have I had a lot of skeptics or people that I've had to convince or argue with or whatever. I've been so fortunate. I have had nobody in my life, nobody. My dad, even, he'll say to me, "Lisa, I don't know what you're talking about, but somehow I believe you." I mean, it sounds crazy to me, but I believe you. Like, even that, he's proud of that I can do this, but he doesn't know what it is. And so it's kind of interesting. My mom my mom and dad split up, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. And she ended up marrying a Jehovah Witness. And because of that, she's now having a hard time with this, because now she's Jehovah Witness. And so it's like, oh, it's the work of the devil. And so she's having a real problem with it. So I don't talk to her about that at all because it scares her. But prior to that, she was Catholic and was fine with it. Everything was fine. So other than her, I would say no. I mean, there's people that might say, especially living in the States, like in Canada, it's no, I didn't notice this because we don't have a lot of sort of the evangelical Christians. I think we have them, but it's not as big of a deal. But in the States, there's an awful lot of the different denominations that are evangelical, and they believe it's the work of the devil. And so I am careful in the States when I'm meeting a new person to, I always say to them, look, I don't know what faith you are. So if I tell you, because they say, what do you do for a living? I'll say, I just want to preface this by saying, I don't know what you believe, because there's certain faiths that might not take kindly to this, but here's what I do. So I always say that to them first. I don't just kind of proudly announce what I do, because you have to wait to get to figure out, the reaction or what their background is. But in Canada, I don't ever get that. I just sort of, I'm out with whoever I'm with. I just tell them what I do, and everyone, is okay with it. So I've been pretty fortunate.
Is there part of this journey that you rarely talk about, but has shaped you deeply?
Well, when I started doing this professionally, prior to that, I went on a spiritual quest, and that changed my life a lot. Definitely, I began to meditate. I began to get, more connected, just learning about reincarnation and just learning about, reading a lot of books and sort of figuring things out. And I think in those years, yeah, it really changed me. Because prior to that, I had the gift naturally, but I was just a regular person. And I didn't really think about karma or consequences when actions, what goes up must come down. I didn't think about balancing things like that. So I just behaved in whatever way I behaved. And if I said something nasty or I thought something nasty, I didn't give it a thought. Now I get, like, since then, once I realized that, wait a minute, it does matter. What you do, what you say, what you think, it does matter. And once I realized that, and I saw that in working with spirit, I completely changed. And I'm not saying I'm perfect now. I'm by no means a saint, but at least I realize when I do something wrong or think something not nice, I realize it right away and think, okay, that's not cool. And you're going to have to pay for that. You're going to have to balance that out. Like, maybe apologize or whatever it is. I don't often just let it slip by like, it's inconsequential. It is consequential.
So have there ever been moments where spirit fades and what comes through feels like pure wisdom with no person attached?
Yeah, not so much now, so much because like I said, there was this period of time where I was really connected and I was working it. And in those years, yeah, for sure, I feel like my whole frequency was raised. Everything was different. And so I was in touch with, call it my higher self, call it the God consciousness, whatever. It was just coming through me, and I would channel things, and I was automatic writing and writing books, like channeled children's books and things that I would never, it didn't come from me. So yeah, I feel like you can, and people can very easily get in touch with their higher self. I teach intuitive development classes, and we do exercises to connect with our higher selves, because if you are in touch with that, I mean, I think all artists and poets and musicians, they're connecting with that side, that beautiful wisdom that's inside themselves, that they don't always seem to have access to.
Okay, here's the $1 million question, Lisa. If you had to describe the true nature of reality, not as a medium, but as a soul who's seen behind the curtain, what would you say it is?
Love. Honestly, just love. I think if you get into a state of pure love, I think everything makes sense, and you see and you are everything. So I feel like that's what we're here for, is just to learn to love and be loved, and accept being loved. We are loved, but to accept that, which is the problem most people have, is the accepting that you are loved and you are perfect. And I had an experience with Jesus. It was a lot of years ago, decades ago, actually. And I had this dream. Every night of the week, I would have this dream of me on a narrow strip of land, water on both sides, and then the water comes over me, constantly having this dream. And I thought, what is this? So I went and had a past life regression done with this therapist. And I was looking for something in my childhood where I maybe almost drowned or something. Actually, it wasn't that. They took me to my last life. I went right back in through to my last life, and I was this, I saw my death in the last life, and I saw myself rise up out of the body, and I was met by all our loved ones up in heaven. And then I saw this beautiful presence coming towards me, and it was Jesus. And he told me I had to go back, like, into this life now. And he told me that I had to go back to help my dad, because my dad was with us when we all drowned in the car. And because my dad was going straight back because he had driven the car into the lake. And so he had committed suicide, basically. So he's coming right back around to get the same problems to see if he could do better. And Jesus said, you have to go back to help him. He said, but also I want you to tell the world what I have shown you here. And then he began to show me a sort of a movie film of murderers, rapists, pedophiles, adulterers, and all the things we think of as sins. And in each case, Jesus said, what do you see here? And I said, they're perfect and beautiful. And then the next scene, they're perfect and beautiful. So he was showing me the essence of the people. And he said, go back and tell the world what I have shown you here. And since then, Jesus has come to me many times, just personally. And he has talked to me about forgiveness, especially other things, yes, but forgiveness, saying that we look out into the world and we see all these things that people are doing, and we're enraged about what we see. But he says, it's not about what they're doing. He said, on some level, deep down, we can't forgive ourselves. We're enraged because there was times when we did these things. So I'm assuming that's meaning past lives. And he said, we must forgive ourselves because we are perfect and beautiful. And according to the Christian faith, he's already died for our sins. He's done that. And so he said, people just won't let themselves off the hook. They just constantly are self-punishing. And he wants us to forgive ourselves for everything. And he wants me to teach that. And I have done some of that. So I would say if we could love ourselves, forgive ourselves, and love and forgive others, honestly, I think we're done. I think we're going into I was told that we're going into the next band of consciousness after this. And that is the 4th, 5th, and 6th band. So, and that right now we're in this band of consciousness, which is about survival. So all our lessons that we're learning are around survival, which they are, pain and suffering and sickness and food, food and money and all the things. It's all survival here. The next band of consciousness, where we will also be learning our lessons and growing and learning, is going to be creation consciousness. So we'll be learning, but without any of this survival stuff. And so the lessons should be a lot easier, I think. And I think that's one thing to love.
So do you have a year for that? When that all is going to happen?
I hesitate to even talk about these things, especially years, because doesn't it say right in the Bible, no one knows the day or the hour, not even the sun? But when starting in 2018, I started getting, for the first time ever, with my friend Deva Premal. You guys might know her music. Deva Premal does chant Sanskrit.
Well, hold on. I had a surprise for you. Today, and I think this is the perfect time to play my little surprise for you. Are you ready?
Sure. Beautiful. Thank you so much. I love her. We're friends and I love her. And I just sent her a message about 2 weeks ago and I said, Deva, so I started getting world messages and I pretty well only get them with her when we're having our little talks. And I don't know why. Well, I asked Bear once why. It was always seemed to be with her. But anyways, I got a message in 2018 that we had 7 years left to get our houses in order. That takes us to, we're at the end now. So this year, starting now, anytime, because I didn't know the exact date of it, but basically we're in that time period now. Then throughout that time in 2019, December 2019, I was told by George Harrison, but also Shiva came to me and told me that, this is December 2019, that told me about COVID, all about that, what was coming, and this whole thing, and how the world would be turned upside down from that point forward, that we were going into the final battle of light and dark, that this is the Armageddon, that starting 2020, it was going to start this battle, or this Armageddon that you humans, call Armageddon. He said that the light will win, for sure, in the end, but it will not be easy. Talked about a lot of things, some of it which has come to pass. One thing that hasn't was major destruction by water. That has not happened yet. I mean, there's been certain places around the world. And then since then, a couple of times in through that 7 years, they've come to me and said, yeah, we're on track. This is the halfway point, la, la, la. They said there was one event that hasn't happened yet, that it was going to be something that would be unprecedented and would leave us in shock and awe and living like old-fashioned people. That has not happened yet. And that was a little bit freaky to hear. So I never asked to get world messages. I don't want them, but for some reason they were given to me. And so if I had to guess, what I tell my friends is that this is the year that I think some major things will start happening. I'm not going to say what, and I'm not asking Spirit anymore, but I had a message to Deva the other day and said, what do you think, Deva? Should we sit down again and maybe see if something, if they want to give us some timeline here? And I said, I'm almost not wanting to know, kind of. So what do you think? And I will wait and see what she says. So that's, I don't know what to tell you about that.
That's good enough. That's good.
Unless you want to go into the Armageddon thing more.
You guys are free to cut that right out of this video.
No. I just want to say, I just want to say, go ahead with your conversation, but when the moment is appropriate, I want to tell my Deva Premal story. Okay, but I can wait.
I just have one last question to ask, because the Hindus believe in the 4 yugas, the cycles that we go through, we being in the darkest one right now, the Kali Yuga, and it keeps going around and around to light back to dark. Have you channeled any of these beings that have been in that lightest of light stage, that have given you any information about that time on the planet, or in other planets on the universe where there was full enlightenment?
I would say no. I know this, though, 2 channelings. Okay, I had 2 channelings. where they were in 2023, I believe. But one was a young guy from San Diego that called me. And as soon as I started channeling him, I said, oh my gosh, you are St. Paul. You are the Apostle Paul. And I started talking about all of this. And then I said, and you will be here to walk with Jesus when he comes back. You're being set aside for this. And I went on and on about this. And then a couple of months later, I was reading for a mother, and I did her reading. And then when she asked me to tune into her two children, when I got to the little boy who was about 10 or 12, I said, okay, he was one of the sets of twins. He was one of the twins of a set of twins of apostles. And he also will be set aside to walk with Jesus when he comes back. He will be alive to walk with him. So I believe Jesus is coming back, and he will walk with us. I know there's Christ consciousness and all of that, but I'm talking he will be on this earth on some, or at some frequency that we are, where we will be able to walk with him. So maybe that's after this final battle of light and dark, which I believe, listen, there isn't any history that doesn't talk about that, whether it's the Hopi Indians and whether the Mayans, the Egyptians, it doesn't matter, Nostradamus.
Or the Hindus. It's in every
All of them.
single culture.
And
Even
we're in
Buddhists
it.
have their own version of it. Every single culture.
And we're in it. Like, we always think it's somebody else that's going to live through it. I feel like we're in it. Like, I don't know, maybe me personally at my age, I don't know, but I know that we're, but I feel like because of those two channelings that I got, I feel like whatever's going to happen will happen. And then Jesus is coming. And maybe there is that 1,000 years peace. And maybe because those two people are for sure walking with Christ. And I also felt back years ago that the people that were in the time of Jesus, a lot of the ones that were with him they're reincarnated now, and they're going to be in the time when he comes back. So I think there's a beautiful end to all of it, but let's not kid ourselves. We can see, all of us have eyes to see that this world right now, and Jesus said this exactly, he said the world has turned very dark. Most people are just not operating in light.
And there's that tribulation, if you want to go back to biblical accounts, there's the period, before Jesus returns, there's the tribulation. So that's this kind of feeling that, in a sense, you could say is a feeling of tribulation is like kind of, you could see how it might be interpreted as happening right now, this tribulation.
Yes. And even if I hadn't been told, which I sadly was, I think we'd all feel it. Anyone who can feel energy can feel it. And God, it was an Easter weekend, and I had a channeling, which I believe was right from God. I was doing a course, and right then and there, this God came through with it. And he talked about this world, and he said, if you wonder why this world is so disordered, he said, it's because the people are disordered. They need to put me first. He said, because they're foolish. They think they can take me out of everything, whether it's government, teacher, or, schooling. They're taking me out of families. They're taking me out of everything. And he says, how foolish are the people? Because what they don't realize is that I am life. So when they remove me, they remove life. And so I guess we're seeing what it's like to be without God. We're living in a very godless society in many ways. And he said it could turn around in an instant if the people would become ordered properly, putting me first and then the rest after that. And I've given these warnings to people that we have to do that. And Jesus also said to me, in the time that, you guys are living in now, it's important to just really, again, back to the love. He said, anybody you see, whether it's the cashier, the person filling your gas tank, whoever it is, the bank teller, whatever, really look at them and really see them and really connect with them. And he said, if you do that, you'll be happy. No matter what happens, you're okay. And I think all is in divine and perfect order. Whatever happens, we all chose to be here for such a time as this. And here we are. And so we obviously didn't want to be watching from the sidelines, looking down, saying, whoa, no, we wanted to be right here, boots on the ground, doing whatever is necessary. And I think to bring light and love into the world is our calling. And if that means through a messy time, then so be it. we still be light and love through that messy time, and maybe help others through it.
Gary, do you want to talk about the book a little bit, Gary?
No, I don't think we have time. I think we're out. All I can say is I love the book. I had my own Deva Premal experience while reading it. But at this point we're out of time. I have another. You have to go, Lisa, right?
Yeah.
I have to be someplace. So we're gonna have to just end it here. But love the book. I'm gonna get a reading from you. I definitely am gonna get I'm gonna book I'm on your website. I'm gonna book a reading. I love the book. I love the section on my favorite section, of course, was Jesus and George Harrison, and the Deva. I'll tell my Deva Premal story maybe when we do the reading, but not today. But thanks. It's really been a treat to talk to you and hear what you have to say. You're so bright and you're so light, and it really comes through. So,
well, thank you both for having me. I so enjoyed this.
Really
it's a wonderful conversation, and you're both very gifted in your way. And you understand we're in this world and we're seekers and finders, right?
We're in the trench, and as you point out, we're down in the trenches. We're not up there looking down at it, and let's say if this indeed is the tribulation or lead into it or whatever, we're right here. But I think one point you make, and I think this is the key point, is that when you're in love consciousness, or when you're in tune with the vibration of love, no matter what happens to you in the outer sense, and we don't know what's going to happen, right? But let's face it, when you're in that consciousness of love and forgiveness and surrender and sharing, and you're experiencing the grace of God, then whatever happens, you're going to be okay. I feel sorry for the people who kind of are caught up in all the stuff that's going on and don't have this, the sense that we have of being established in the inner, the inner truth, as you say, and as you pointed out, in the Jesus section of the book. It's all about love. It's all about forgiveness, and it's all about. And you make a great point. You came to the realization that there is no separation. There is no other. These projections, of these other people, are all part of you. Everything is all one thing. And the more we come to, as you point out in the book, the more we come to recognize this and accept it, then it kind of, it resolves itself. So no separation. And it's all one. So I got that from the book. Really great book. Love it. And we'll be in touch because I'm going to have a reading with you.
Amen to that.
Thank you so much,
Lisa.
Guys.
Thank you. Okay. Hey, let's go out. Hey, come on. Let's go. You want to go out on a good note?
All right. Let's do it.
Deva Premal.
Every seeker has a story. Write to us at seekersandfinderspodcast@gmail.com.